Today I'm making, honestly, a pretty dumb piece of furniture for an equally dumb client, but I actually think it turned out pretty good. So, I don't know. Maybe that means I'm the dumb one? Oh, and thanks to FlexiSpot for sponsoring this video. I've actually been using their E7 desk in my shop lately, and it's turned out to be pretty handy. More on that in a bit. Okay, let's unpack that a little bit. If you're a longtime viewer of my channel, you'll know that every once in a while I like to make a kind of, goofy, slightly absurd piece of furniture. I like to call them my palette cleansers. I made a coffee table with a bunch of holes in it, a literal sliding dovetail table, a coffee table big enough for 1 cup of coffee, and a hidden cereal bowl table. But I haven't done one in a while, and I feel like I need a palette cleanser for a few reasons. The first reason is that this is the current state of my shop. It's a garage with a car in it and a lot of trash. My family and I have moved halfway across the country, so I'm moving my shop again, but this time it's going to be in my backyard, which is pretty great. All right, so here's my new commute. But that also meant I needed to get a project done before we moved. So a tight time frame with a lot of other stuff going on in my life felt like a good time for a palette cleanser. So what's this one going to be? Well, kind of piggybacking off of the 1 cup of coffee table and the cereal bowl table, I wanted to do something else kind of like that, and I had a few different ideas, but I just kept coming back to the idea of a 1 bookshelf. Nobody needs this. Nobody wants this, but I'm going to build it, which just might be the worst mindset you can have when it comes to making custom furniture, or honestly just about any business at all. But here we are. So if nobody needs this or wants this, then what's the point? Honestly, I wish I had a good answer to that question, but the truth is I don't really know. The hope is that what I'm making is interesting and intriguing enough for people to want to watch this video, because at the end of the day, the video is really my final product. I kind of take a throw spaghetti at the wall and see what sticks approach for what I build in my videos. And to be fair, even when I see something that sticks, I often just kind of keep throwing more spaghetti. So I suppose that mindset is what got us here, where I'm making a bookshelf for 1 book. There's a lot of spaghetti on my wall as well. Now, when it comes to the actual design of this piece, you can see I'm making a tall cabinet, and I'm cutting some dados for a couple divider panels. I considered leaning into the idea and maybe doing something like this or like this, but at the end of the day, even these kind of wacky pieces still need to be a piece of furniture. And I don't want to build something that's just for the video, then it gets thrown in the trash, because remember, nobody needs this and nobody wants this. So I'm making this 1 bookshelf, and it still needs to be a decent piece of furniture because I'm going to be the one living with it. And I guess that's the one explanation I have so far. Wacky piece of furniture, but still made with just as much care as I would with anything else that was for a client or someone paying for it. Filming the video, on the other hand, this was the shot I got of gluing in the shelves. Kind of a pressed stop when I thought I was pressing record situation. Not kind of. That's exactly what happened. All right, so using our imaginations, we can see that I've built a tall, skinny cabinet with a couple shelves glued in place, and now I could get started on the legs. Luckily, I had some leftover maple from one of my recent Woodworker Source orders for a different piece, and it just so happened that these boards were the perfect height for this bookshelf. I guess now we can say Woodworker Source not only delivers high quality lumber, but they can also tell the future. So these legs aren't anything super special when it comes to the design or the way I made them, but something I've been trying to do with my woodworking lately is to keep things fresh, like change things up to keep it interesting. I've always been somebody that has embraced change. I'm moving again, and besides my childhood home, I've never lived in the same place for more than maybe a couple of years, so I guess I've gotten good at change. And in my furniture and woodworking, I've been trying to just do things differently each time I build a new piece. Not necessarily a new technique or anything like that, though I do love trying new things. But in woodworking, just like with a lot of things in life, there are always so many ways to accomplish the same thing. So I guess why not mix it up and do things differently when you can? The shape of the legs is pretty straightforward, a little bit taller than the cabinet, with a slight curve on the outside edge. But the way I decided to attach them, that's where I went a little bit different. I could have used some dowels or dominoes to quickly get them in place and essentially have the same look. I also could have just used some glue and screws from inside the cabinet, even quicker and also pretty much the same look as long as I'm kind of strategic with my screw placement. But what I decided was to do a super long mortise and tenon. And honestly, this was for basically no other reason than to just do something a little different this time. And it really wasn't any more difficult than the other methods I just mentioned. Maybe a little more time consuming, but when I'm only making this piece one time, that really doesn't matter. On the flip side of embracing change, one thing I'll never waver from is my love for routers. I've probably said this before in other videos, but routers have to be one of, if not the most useful and versatile tool. If I was stuck on, like a deserted island or something and could only have one tool, it would be a router. Battery powered, obviously, with some solar panels and a charger, of course, but that's it. The amount of different things a router can do is pretty crazy, and there's things that only a router can do. Cutting these long grooves, which are the mortises for the legs, is something pretty much only a router can do. I suppose you could chop it out by hand with a chisel and mallet, but come on, who wants to do that? I've actually always wanted to make a piece where I only use a router, just to see how versatile it really is. And I actually think about it fairly often, like more often than you would imagine. It was like when everyone was talking about the Roman Empire and how often guys think about it. I'll be honest, I thought it was a little bit weird because I never really thought about the Roman Empire. Not sure what that says about me, but if all of a sudden everyone was asking how often I think about making a piece of furniture with only a router, then it would make some sense. So maybe someday I'll make a piece of furniture with only a router, but let's be honest, probably not, because come on, who wants to do that? All right, every project has its difficulties, or we make mistakes and have to figure out what to do. That's just how it goes. And I'll be honest, when you're making a video that's meant to be entertaining, sometimes we lean into those mistakes, for the drama. Well, I'm starting to make my little cabinet doors for this piece, and here's that drama. Oh, well, I was just about to cut the little doors to dimension, and I don't even know what kind of made me think of it, but I started thinking about the thickness of the doors and the hinges I'm going to use. Never used these hinges, but they are these sauce concealed hinges, and you can see right here, I have to cut a 3/4 inch deep mortise. And I had already milled the material for my doors down because I wanted them to be kind of thin, and I had milled them too thin. So I'm gonna figure out what to do. Okay, maybe not the most dramatic turn of events, but I promise it gets even less dramatic going forward, but a lot more dumb, so stay tuned. Either way, I'm adding some thickness to the doors to accommodate those hinges I'm planning to use, and I also decided to add some inlays to the cabinet doors. I had some more complex ideas for this part of the build, but I was starting to get a little pressed for time. I think we were moving within a couple days of me filming this part, so I was getting, a little bit stressed. Maybe that's the drama. I should have had like a calendar and a clock running in this video. Dang, missed that opportunity. So I decided to do a somewhat dumbed down version of the inlay design, just for the sake of time, and I kept it simple by cutting all of the grooves on the table saw so I could easily inlay 1/8-inch thick maple into everything. The only tricky part was that I wanted to put a 1/2-inch round over on the outside edge of each door, and I wanted the inlay to look like it was, wrapping around that rounded edge. So to do this, I had to cut a deeper recess where the inlay hits that edge, so I could glue in a piece of maple that was big enough to be rounded over on that edge. I think I'm making it sound more complicated than it is. Anyway, then maybe the best part about doing something like this, getting to run it through the drum sander to clean everything up and reveal those super precise looking inlays. Great job. You know who else does a great job? FlexiSpot, when it comes to making office furniture. So thanks to them for sponsoring today's video. They sent me the E7 Plus desk, which is an affordable and high quality way to get a desk that you can sit and stand at. I just made a standing desk fairly recently. So I decided to see if I could utilize this thing in my shop. So far, it's been awesome to have an adjustable height surface for different tasks, and with the programmable presets, I have it set to perfectly match my outfeed table. But it has a huge height range from 26 inches at the lowest to 51.5 inches at the highest, and it can lift up to 440 pounds. I'd really have to stack a lot of lumber on there to get even close to that. It's also super stable with smooth lifting action, and it's easy to use and easy to put together, and they offer a whole range of desks to fit your needs and budget. So go check out the link in the description and see if one of them is right for you. They have a bunch of Black Friday deals going on right now, so it's a great time to get a great deal on a great desk. All right, thanks FlexiSpot. All right, we are on the home stretch. Let's see, gotta mount the doors, hinges, mount the upper parts that go around the book, sand and finish. Gotta do a few chamfers on some edges, cut the pull recess things for the handles, maybe do a back panel. So like I said, we're on the home stretch. Okay, remember all that talk about the fancy hinges I was going to use and how I had to modify the doors to accommodate those hinges? Then the part where I wanted the inlays on the door to go around the rounded edges? Well, guess what? These are the hinges I ended up having to use. I didn't really go into it earlier, but when I was getting ready to cut the roundovers on the doors, I realized that they would cut directly into the mortise I needed for those fancy hinges, which obviously would not be a good look on the finished piece. So I had to make kind of a Sophie's choice, roundovers or fancy hinges. And in the end, the roundovers won. The fancy hinges were going to be invisible, and even these cheap hinges are pretty low profile. Not horrible for a first fit, but definitely needs a little fine tuning. Then the roundovers, on the other hand, are a very obvious part of the cabinet and the overall design, I suppose. And I felt like that wasn't really the place to make a compromise. So I think it was the right decision, but what the hell do I know? Okay, one thing I do know is if you've been wanting to try woodworking but haven't figured out how to get started, I've been working on a beginner woodworking course along with Chris from Four Eyes Furniture and John from Lincoln Street Woodworks for the better part of a year. And we're getting really close to having it ready for everyone. So if you want to be the first to know about it and get in on some pre-sale pricing, sign up for our email list. I'll put a link in the description. All right, the last part of this bookshelf, and the part that I think is kind of the most ridiculous, is the upper section where the book actually sits. I had to build it out a little bit so the book would be held nicely in place. Kind of like, I don't know, semi-permanent bookends on a regular bookshelf. And I say semi-permanent because I thought it would be hilarious to make this part of the bookshelf removable and replaceable depending on what book you want to put in there. I guess the idea is like you have this one bookshelf, but then the regular bookshelf right next to it is full of all your other books, as well as all of the custom inserts for each one of those books. I thought it was funny, but I don't know, is that funny? Or do I just have a kind of a bad sense of humor? I guess the good part is that I only made one. I'm not that crazy to actually make all these different inserts and put them in a bookshelf. But at the same time, I did just spend a week making a bookshelf for one book, so I guess I'm not far off. I suppose now that it's just about done, I can't dwell on whether or not I should have made it or why I made it, but instead I need to think about what now. If a person only has space for one book in a one book shelf, how do you choose what book to put in it? It has to be important, it has to be a book that you enjoy reading, or maybe a book you should be reading. A book that enriches and teaches and can guide you through some of those difficulties in life. Okay, so it might be a dumb piece of furniture, and I might be dumb for making it, but sometimes dumb is good. And you know, at the end of the day, it's a piece of furniture that does exactly what it was intended to do. Hold a single, very important book that I should probably be reading more than I do. So, if you're ever hesitant to make something because you think it might be too dumb, just remember, I made an entire bookshelf that can only hold one.